Hey guys, I'm Matt Brown, and these are my lovely co-hosts, Lindsay and Dave, and we're Accurate Perspective with our next episode of the podcast, episode 7. And today with us we have County Clerk candidate Misha. Hey Misha, there you are. Special effects. How are you doing? Good. So you jumped into running for county
I'm
clerk.
great.
Good. Why did you jump in to run for county clerk?
It's kind of always my plan to run for clerk. Slagle retired, but when she announced this year that she was not to run for re-election, I decided now was the time. I've been working in the office for the past almost 4 years and have worked a lot to try and get smoothly and checks and balance place and updating technology. And so I see this as a perfect opportunity to take that positive momentum and kind of move with it through the rest of the office.
Awesome. So tell us briefly, like what does a county clerk do?
Well, the clerk is, we are the hold record for Superior Court. So everything that happens in Superior Court, the papers come through us and forever. We also take alts in Superior Court and disperse them according to the orders that the judge signs. So victims, sending out the restitution to the victims, making they're getting compensated as in, and then also collecting filing fee, that sort of thing, new cases, divorces, all of that. They provide clerks to sit in court next to the judge and process paperwork, announce the judge from keep the court minutes and the record that way.
Awesome. Hey, Misha, next question is going to be for me. And what differentiates you from the other candidates in the race? One or two things.
To differentiate me from the other candidates in the race would be that I'm already in a management in the clerk's office. Neither of the other candidates are. And I also have been working on a lot of the forefront of the office management stuff for the last, right alongside of the current clerk, along with like the decision and implementing some new things, credit card readers at the counter to help process be more efficient. And then I also have an experience under my, along with quite a bit of accounting experience. And I've taken office from having a very long list of audit issues with the state auditor to having an absolutely clean. So that would be my main things I'd say.
Awesome.
And Misha, what changes would you want to make when you're elected?
When I am elected, if I'm elected, I would like to, I'd kind of like to bring the office more into technology. We're kind of lagging behind in that area. There's a lot of things that I can see we could do to improve efficiency, make things easier, especially for like attorneys that are out of town, being able to e-documents instead of having to mail them. There's a lot of them there, and I think we could really make some stuff more efficient for the public.
Man, we're still.
And then also, I'd kind of like to streamline processes all throughout the office. I think there's just a lot of government in general. There's a lot of that there's a lagging, and I think could really streamline some of the processes to really be efficient.
Interesting. That's interesting that we're still at this moment in 2022, not e-filing things in government. I work over at the city, and we do a lot of things still to this day, all paper. And I'm like, I get it. okay, it's old school, we got to sign a signature, all that stuff. But man, it would make my life easier, and probably everyone else's lives easier too, to be able to do this digitally.
Yeah. Especially for those that aren't in town and are having to either travel here or send things through the mail. Snail, that takes a while, as we all know. Not getting any faster. And then also, I mean, we just started taking credit cards. So if you can imagine, we only took cash before. So it's been a huge improvement so far. I'd like to also, I've been working on getting that set up out at our juvenile location as well. Because it's awful when somebody can, all they have is $100 bill and we're like, sorry, we can't break that. It's just not a great service to the public. So I want to make sure that the serve everybody comes in and in an efficient, what's done, quick, help them get on their way.
Awesome. For the viewers at home, what is something that they need to know why they should vote for you over the other two candidates?
I'm sorry, you cut out there a little bit.
Oh, sorry. What do voters at home need to know about you versus the other two candidates, and why they should vote for you?
I would say vote for me because I am transparent. What you get is what you see. I'm not going to blow in anybody's mirrors. I'm just going to tell you how it is. I've been a loyal public servant 5 years, and my heart and soul goes into serving the public. I want to be there to make sure that everything's easier for everyone. And then also, within our office, it's been a lot of turmoil over the last 8 years, I would say, in there, going back before I ever started there. And I'm really big. I'd like to bring a lot of training staff, get people up and moving to speed on things better, and help them learn how to provide better service, passionate with the public, because let's face it, not many people come into the Superior Court clerk's office with something happen. So those are things that I'd really like to do and help to make better experience for everybody who comes through.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Misha, for joining us today. We're going to transition a little bit here to some local politics stuff going on. We had our last episode, we actually had filing week. We did the filing week blitz. The team here actually almost passed out at the end of that week. We've had a couple weeks off. And one of the interesting things coming out of that, though, I want to mention is actually in the senator race that Honeyford was in. So Misha's going to keep with us here for a little bit. But for Honeyford, Jim Honeyford has been our senator, I believe in the 15th for a very long time. And, Nikki Torres, which is a competitor, jumped in, and Jim Honeyford actually pulled his name out the Monday afterwards and decided to just basically, I'm not going to run. What do you guys think about that? It's an interesting thing, because then no one else could actually run against Nikki, so she's now running unopposed.
I guess my first question is like the House does. So the House, they put up who they're endorsing candidate-wise. Does the Senate do it, and did they do that for Nikki Torres already? Because that would kind of give us more insight, right, into why Jim Honeyford retired. Was she handpicked, or was this just circumstances just worked out for Nikki Torres, and she's going to become our state senator now? I don't know. I had to do more research, but I think, there's something for both of those things. I think the Republican Party in the state is notorious for picking the next person up, which is not really a great thing.
Right. I mean, that's been an interesting one, because it kind of takes it out of the hands of the voter, or if someone who wasn't necessarily wanting to run against Honeyford, right? They're like, nah, dude, he's been there for a long time. I'm not gonna go against him. So they waited, and then and then he filed, and then now we're in this situation where, and I don't know anything about Nikki other than she's a Pasco City Council, or was. She had to actually resign from that, but so it's an interesting piece. Actually, did she resign? Maybe that was another council member.
I think Honeyford also endorsed her almost immediately as well.
Yeah, he did. Actually, that was actually, I think, in his farewell letter was an endorsement. It's kind of interesting, I think, I'm wondering if you'll see a write-in candidate show up out of nowhere. I looked that up. It's actually kind of interesting piece, because if you're a write-in in that district, you only have to have I think it's less than 1% or 1% to actually make it to the general as a name on the ballot, right? And so
I have some free time.
I was looking at it and I was like, man, it's only about I think it was about between 100 and 300 people as a signature to get on for the main ballot. So it'll be interesting to see if anyone jumps in there come after the primary. If you are thinking about running in that district, you do have to declare at least 3 weeks before ballots are due, so that you can actually file at the county auditor's office, so that it's not just, you voted for your mom on there. They actually has a registered name, so they know who you are. I always get the jokes of, I just don't know who to vote for, so I'm just going to put this person in there. It's like Barney or so. Anyways, I thought that was interesting. That was after filing again, so then no one else could really jump in at that front. The other thing, we're in June. We're in a interesting month across our nation, and I think one of the things that has been floating out in local politics world right now is that the Yakima City Council is so anti-LGBTQ because they took the pride flag off the side of the city hall. And I'm just going to be here as the guy setting the record on this. Is this had nothing to do with pride, had nothing to do with that community. It had everything to do with keeping equal everyone's rights. We had two groups approach us. And, we're not going to pick winners and losers. I mentioned this on one of our previous podcasts is, what would you have liked us to do then? If we allow every flag out there, who gets to say that is okay to be on the side of a city building when, you could say any horrible group that's named out there that you might not agree with decides that, hey, I want my flag on that side of the building too. Can we then say no to them? No, not if we allow them all, according to the Supreme Court, which was recently ruled that way. And so, and there's council members that are out there right now that are saying this was a Holly Cousins, Matt Brown, and Patricia coup on the LGBTQ community. And let me just tell you right now, no, it's not. And it was also a 7-0 vote by the city council to actually do this. And not only that, the case at the Supreme Court level, they're, also like to say, well, this is a conservative Supreme Court. They ruled on this, blah, 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 blah. It was also a 9-0 decision by the Supreme Court saying if you're going to fly one flag, you got to fly them all. So it's a very interesting thing how they want to kind of paint you and divide you. And when I say they, I mean the Yakima Herald. I believe there was a article that said, this was a planned coup against the LGBTQ pride community. And man, that is just not the case. And so anyways, what do you guys think about that?
Well, I think with the Herald stuff, what did they cite as their evidence? Have they done a public records request? That would be some good evidence for them to have. If not, they're just kind of spewing out the side of their mouth, making it up. That's kind of what I got on that.
Yeah, I mean, they did. So, as a city official, I did get a public records request from the Herald, and I had no records to give them other than what was in my email, which was not much. So, it's an interesting one of, you can just write what you want to write, and no one actually checks those things. And so this is, going on the record as saying this was not to attack anyone. This was to be fair and to keep people's First Amendment rights protected, their freedom of speech. And to be honest with you, the city hall is not a public forum. I actually got asked this by the news, actually, KIMA earlier this week. So what's the difference between a public forum, city hall? And I was like, well, I mean, city hall is a government building, and a public forum is like where everyone can come place whatever they want. Art pieces, it's a public forum. It's set up for that. And that's not what City Hall was set up for. So it's interesting. And, I actually think a lot of the community actually supports our decision on this. So, if you are a city council member that's out there trying to figure out if you're going to waver on this piece, I ask the question is, well, how do we keep people's rights protected? If we're going to be picking winners and losers, we just can't. So, Lindsay, what do you think?
Well, so some of the other members, it seems like, are kind of acting like it was your guys' call, but it was a 7-0, right? So I'm just curious how that discussion went amongst the 7 of you, since you all agreed on it at the time.
Yeah, so I mean, it was on our city council meeting. I think it was on May. What day was that? It was May. It would have been May 17th. Or maybe it was the week before. I don't know. It was one of those meetings. We actually had, we discussed it. And because of the litigation that happened at the Supreme Court, everyone was like, well, yeah, this is just common sense.
Right, because it protects us from legal action, right? That was part of is protecting Yakima against legal suit. Is that right?
Yes. Yeah. I mean, we had 2 groups actually send in. They wanted a flag up in June, and immediately we're sitting there going, so what do we do? How do we pick a winner and a loser here? And then that's actually when the case actually was settled in Boston, which I thought was just kind of crazy that this case just happened to be settled right then and there. But it was pretty black and white. It was, you're either going to allow them all or you're not going to allow any of them. So, I mean, that's what all the Supreme Court justices said, 9-0.
Hey, so there's some other news out there, right? And with the crosswalks, are you going to have the same issue with the crosswalks? If somebody can paint a crosswalk, whatever they want, and it's approved by the city, who's to say somebody can't come in and paint something that might be seen as derogatory or hurtful towards a certain group of people? Like, how do you say no to that? I think it's the same exact situation.
It is. Yeah, it is definitely the same situation. So a lot of people have asked, well, did the city council approve that? Well, the city council 2 years ago set a policy for sidewalk or crosswalk art type of thing, because there was another group at the time, I believe, did sidewalk painting down, I think it was 6th Street downtown. And the community was up in a buzz about it. What are you doing? You're ruined, blah, 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 blah. And at the time, the city council was like, well, we don't even have a policy on this. Where does this go? Who is the arts commission? How does this come about? So they created a policy, and, it's not even the city didn't pay for any of those things, right? The city didn't pay for those crosswalks. They didn't, it was actually a private group that funded it and put it all together. And I think there are some logistics on that. If I'm not mistaken, I believe you have to be a nonprofit to actually pay for it. So it's not like any business can go down there and start putting up, billboards on the crosswalks around town, which would be kind of an interesting advertising play, though.
Well, I was just thinking some political organizations sometimes are nonprofit, right? So why can't I start my own nonprofit, apply to paint on the crosswalk, vote Republican on every crosswalk in the city?
Well, I don't think you can have words or letters or symbols. Is that right, Matt? I think it's just colors. And so
Correct.
that it would be hard to send it other messages with other colors, I think.
I'm sure there's a workaround. I'm going to figure it out for the next episode.
Dave will.
Yeah. No, it's true though. I mean, that was someone asked me, said, "Well, how could you let them do that?" And I said, "Man, it's the same thing. If you want to go do it, you want to paint your sidewalk something, there's a process to it, go for it. You got to have a nonprofit. Here's the policy. That's what they went through. They went through that same policy. Whether I agree with messaging or not, this is what it was. And it was fair.
Just let streets be streets. Their asphalt, their choice. Don't force anything on them.
Right. I actually had a little old man call me, and he was a cute little old man. He called me and he's like, "So I'm really concerned about the streets or the crosswalks that were painted." And I said, "Oh, okay. Well, what are you concerned about?" And he said, "Well, it scared me. I was driving and it just came out of nowhere. And I was like concerned. I didn't know what it was. I didn't know if I could keep driving or not." And, and so I said, "Well, are you okay?" And he's like, "Oh yeah, I'm fine. I didn't hit anybody. Thankfully I just decided to drive down different roads now." And I said, "That's probably good. That's probably good." So, anyways, moving on to our last piece, interesting one. So in Yakima, I always talk about how our two, it seems to be like our two pieces of that we do really well in Yakima with is the fact that we have a coffee shop on every corner, and across the street is a church on every corner, right? Those are the two like economies of Yakima. And interesting piece with that is that the state actually just put in a new whack code that actually kind of messes with a lot of our coffee shops, where they now have to provide a bathroom to everybody. So our coffee stands, that they don't have a bathroom. And then they have to have plumbing and sewer, right? So plumbing and sewer to each coffee stand. So I was talking to a couple of our coffee shops around here in town, and a lot of those stands don't have those, right? And one of the coffee owners actually said that could actually shut down 30 to 40 of the coffee stands around town. That's a huge deal for a local economy. What do you guys think about that?
Well, from the article I read, Matt, it said that it would be like $100,000.
That's it.
In some cases too. Yeah, it's insane.
Yeah, I mean, one of my buddies who owns one of the coffee shops in town, he was telling me that, or coffee stand in town, was telling me just to put in water into their place, right? Not even sewer. You don't even want to know what that's going to cost. But water was $15,000 to put in. And that was because it was close. A lot of these stands are just like in the middle of a parking lot somewhere, you know.
And it's not like we're in an economic time of prosperity either. Businesses are cash strapped, people are cash strapped.
Yeah.
This is not going to be an easy decision. And then obviously it's just more regulation. But what happens when these coffee stands close down and you just leave these abandoned little stands there, or they do get taken away, but then it's a blight on the neighborhood too.
Right.
Another example of West Siders making decisions for everybody and not considering, the downstream effect.
Well, it seems a little tone deaf too. I mean,
Absolutely.
We're not in a great time to be making these. Well, guys, we're going to take a little short break here. And after the break, we're going to have Mark Herr, and we're talking regional government. Misha, thank you so much for coming on the show. We had a little bit of technical difficulties with this little lag time, but it's been good. We've made it work. And we will be back right here after the commercial break. This show is sponsored by Mac Daddy Coffee Roasters. If you haven't been there before, go check them out. It's down at 28 North 1st Street and tell them Accurate Perspective sent you. You guys, this is a great local coffee shop. Thank you so much for sponsoring the show. We couldn't do this without you. Again, go check them out, Mac Daddy Coffee Roasters. And we're back. We are the Accurate Perspective Podcast. And today we have a special guest. His name is Mark Herr. There he is, special effects. And we're going to be talking regional government. We told you we were going to do it at our last episode, and we're doing it. So Mark, what is regional government?
Well, first, thanks for having me on your show. I love it. I love the music. I love the graphics. I love the high five microphone on there. I just wanted to high five it. Thanks for having me on, you guys. Appreciate it. So regional government is a variable form of government that is meant to replace fixed government like states and county governments. What it does is it takes an issue like transportation, and you bring various jurisdictions like cities and counties and states and the Department of Transportation together, and they all get together at Denny's, have some breakfast, and they're like, okay, hey, what can we do to help you? And the federal guy goes, I got $23 million. And the state says, we'll match it. And then everyone says, okay, we'll raise everyone's property taxes by 3% to match it. And then it kind of works like that. And then that's kind of phase one. And then phase two, they're like, man, this was great. We raised all this money. We got these new buses. There's nobody who rides on them, but it's fantastic. And then next thing you know, it says, hey, let's create a regional transportation district, phase two. And then they say, okay, well, you guys, hey, city council X, Y, and Z, you guys send somebody from your whatever, city council member or an employee, and you come over here, and eventually they have a meeting and they start making, and then they bring the plans back and everybody votes on them, and then they bring it back. And then eventually that's kind of phase two. Phase three, they become their own jurisdiction where they take over the issue and become a separate entity that controls that issue. So it's an issue-based thing. It's variable jurisdiction. They do it by phases, luring elected officials from various jurisdictions. It's way more efficient in terms of like getting things done, how fast they can get things done. And it allows like federal, state, and local governments to collaborate and cooperate with each other on specific things.
Right.
Okay, now let me read it to you back in slow-mo. No.
Yeah, right. Why? I mean, it all sounds good, right? In for someone as an elected official, well, why wouldn't you want to collaborate? Why wouldn't you want to have all these different jurisdictions? Bypassing all the lines of government. Right. Why wouldn't you? Like, why not? Yeah. Why is this not a good thing for?
It's smart. It's green. It's sustainable. It's great.
Right.
It's cooperative. It's collaborative. It's coordinative. Yeah, it's efficient. Equitable. And we don't have to deal with those pesky little parents showing up, and we don't have to deal with those irate, whoever, we can get things done because we're able to collaborate. We're the best to know what's wrong with our communities. We're in the best position to make those choices. So let's collaborate together. And, people like Dave, I mean, geez, it's just, I don't know. I don't know what they show up. I mean, it's on backwards. Come on. Deplorable, right? So it's efficient for them. They're the experts. And then they're like, how can we keep these people who don't really understand? They don't really know what's going on, behind the scenes. And create this, what they perceive as balance in making the decisions for the social needs, whatever they are. So, right. For example, the very first regional thing, there's two time frames regarding the evolution of regional government. There's the pre-official regionalization of stuff, and then there's the post-federal official regionalizing of things. So prior to 1935, cities and towns like New York, for example, populations burgeoning, Philadelphia, Chicago, they got together with the other municipal governments and they said, hey, let's create a regional planning district or a regional planning zone for whatever reason. So they just kind of naturally did that. But then in the 1930s, they other people saw this as, hey, this is an opportunity. They enshrined it in the National Resources Committee, got it put into the official federal pathway of doing things. And by 1954, the first federal law was passed to make regionalization a thing. It's in the Housing Act of 1954. It allowed federal agents to go bypass the state and go meet with local people, government officials, planning departments, and say, hey, we've got all this money. How can we help you? And they said, we'll offer you technical assistance in exchange for. And then by 1962, they went from housing to the highways. So from housing to transportation with the Highway Act of 1962. So any city, any local jurisdiction that receives any sort of federal money for highways has to create a metropolitan planning organization. It's called an MPO. Then by the 70s and the 80s, all the cities and counties around the nation started adopting this process of converting. Hey, we'll collaborate with federal agents. We'll create these MPOs. And then by the late 90s, you started seeing regional transportation districts, regional hospital districts, regional health boards, parks and recreations, water districts, fire districts, mosquito districts, just to name a few in Washington.
It's a lot of districts.
There's a lot.
Well, it's weird too, because you would think some of these things are it seems redundant. When you have a county government, for example, like why do I need to have another group trying to receive funding for, let's say, roads, when the county is the one who has jurisdiction over these type of projects? It just seems like we're just creating another I don't know, a mess is what we're creating. And who's really in charge? Who's on first? Who's on second? Like, how do we know? How do we know where anything? Where do we go as citizens to actually, like, dude, this roundabout that's outside my house? There's 4 people who keep getting into accidents out here every other day. Who do I actually go talk to? I'll go talk to the city, and the city goes, well, we don't have any money, and then they go and
yep. And that's kind of what the byproducts of regional government is. It's variable, and most of these entities, whatever issue the region is created for, are made up of bureaucrats who are not elected. So accountability becomes a question. How do you participate? You get the roundabouts. It's kind of like Dave was talking about earlier. It was like, we got to measure out our time. How do we balance things? We got kids, we got jobs, families, hobbies. There's a lot of other things, and so people getting involved in politics, you make it harder for them to participate. That's kind of a byproduct of regional government as well.
So from my perspective, and for the audience, like, I haven't heard this before. This is really the first time. I've been on your website once or twice, don't really remember anything. So hearing it for the first time, and then thinking back to my experience. So I used to work for the city of Sealand, and I was an elected official. And just hearing it for the first time is kind of blowing my mind, because I see now the way you explained it, how it works, okay? Because I was involved in it.
You felt it. You saw it.
And I'm just thinking back to all these different meetings I was in with Washington Department of Transportation, when you had representatives from all these different cities, and then elected officials are sitting in on the meetings. And the thing I keep coming back to is Conference of Governments. Is that a regional government entity?
COGS, yes. Councils of Governments, yes. Those are. Mm-hmm.
Got it. So I think I'm understanding it now. So I'm playing it back to you.
That's awesome, Dave. I see a regional government class in your future.
I do too. I think it's approved by the boss too.
And you have the boss's approval.
That's right.
Well, this is a really important point that Dave brings up is, until we see it or we feel it, it's kind of a distant thing for most. And as Americans are starting to wake up to this notion, and you guys are involved now, Matt, you're elected and stuff. You can see it, but you also can feel it. And what are the byproducts? The byproducts of what the consequences of implementing this are. They really are great for the governing. That makes their lives easier. But it has a consequence for the governed, people who are not in government, who are just living their lives, doing things. access, participation. Who do I talk to? What to make change? I mean, one great point Matt brings up all the time is related to like your experience there in Yakima as the regional crime center is who's in charge and how is a person supposed to hold someone accountable in another city they don't even vote for, right? Which goes back to the byproduct part. And I think in when we create these things, there's a lot of these regional governments now in the United States. It's really important to calculate not just how efficient it's going to be for the governing, what is the political cost to the average person? They may not feel it, they may not see it, they may not understand it, but we should add that to the creation cost, right? The construction cost.
Yeah, I mean, like going into the regional crime center piece, people they were trying to figure out, Matt, why are you not in support of a regional crime center? Because aren't you, tough on crime?
Right? Why aren't you? I don't get it. Why aren't you cooperating?
And well, it's really because I'm going, well, who's in charge? That's number one of this crime center. And then number two is how does Lindsay, a mom, actually fix this thing? If it goes awry, and let's say 10 years from now, 5 years from now, when the group that's in charge of it, either leaves or transitions or, leadership changes, and then it starts going crazy. How do they fix that? How does Lindsay as a mom fix that? And there's no path to that. Then I go, well, then that's where I have a huge problem with that. Lindsay, you were going to say something.
Yeah, well, I took Mark's class, which was awesome. It's all new to me too, Dave. And so wrapping my brain around it, Mark, I just have a question for you.
Sure.
So the regional governance part of it, it kind of expands over states or over lots of massive land. You talked about how individual states they have their own rules, but this is kind of a way to bypass that to cover a larger piece, right? So like the education part, is there an educational regional governance that is above all of our school boards? And that's why we're seeing things being implemented across the country.
Yes.
Instead of what we want. Like we're a conservative county. Why are we seeing all these liberal things being put in when our school boards we're not voting on that? Why are we seeing it happen across the country at once? Is this why?
That's yes, that's very intuitive and very astute. That's a great question, especially for parents who are starting to get involved in going to their schools or taking their kids out of public schools and using homeschools or private schools. So very great question. Great question. So, for example, last night I was doing a North Dakota school government class, and in their in their state law, they're called regional education associations, REAs. In Washington State, the same thing goes by a different name. It's called Education Service Districts, ESDs, right? So each state implements the same regional thing, but by a different name. So your listeners should understand, if I decide I'm getting out of Washington, for example, I'm going to go to Idaho, they have the same things by a different name in Idaho. So be aware of that. Number two is, yes, these things exist. The education service districts in Washington State are in the state code. The Washington, what do they call here? Washington State Code? What do we call them here?
RCWs.
RCWs, Revised Code of Washington. There we go. So the RCWs have created these ESDs, Education Service Districts. And if you could just, on top of it, there'd be an umbrella, it would be regional. Okay. The ESDs provide services to the school districts, not just the school board members. And that's kind of another piece that your listeners have to wrap their head around, is being very clear to distinguish between a school board that is within the school district. Okay. The ESD provides services to the school district. The superintendent of the ESD, is not the same superintendent of your school district. They're two different, they're superintendents, but one is for an ESD that has many school districts in it. And the school district will have one superintendent with school directors as a part of it. So your parents are typically going there, Lindsay. That most of them have no idea this ESD thing exists. Right now, really interesting is that the services that they provide to the school districts are going to be in the area of policy, advocacy, liability protections, trainings, all kinds, whatever we can do to help you, school district, because they're under a lot of pressure. There's money, parents, right, teachers unions, lawsuits. There's all kinds of things that they're facing. And remember, their school directors are elected. The superintendent of the school district is appointed by the school directors. If you go to the bigger ESD, which is going to be comprised of many school districts, there will be one superintendent of that entire region called the ESD. And this is just a side note here. And if I'm going down the rabbit hole, you just turn the spigot off, guys. There is an entity that's a regional thing called the Washington School Directors Association. That association provides services specifically to your school directors. Here, we'll provide you with policy. We'll provide you liability protection. That association that encompasses all the school directors now picks all the superintendents of the ESDs. So going back to our original point, if you're having a hard time wrapping your head around this, is remember the bureaucrat thing that Matt was talking about with the regional crime center. Who do I go to? Who's in charge? You know what I mean? Okay, the ESDs encompass many school districts. The superintendent over the ESD is now going to be picked by the Washington School Director Association that all of your school directors are members of. So in terms of conflicts of interest, Lindsay, massive conflict of interest in relationship to parents wanting to be the primary stakeholder in their children's upbringing, while WASDA, Washington School Directors Association, the ESDs, have a single vested interest in protecting the corporation known as the public school system. Does this make sense, Lindsay?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. It seems like a way to bypass parents once and and just do it up here where, like Matt said, it's hard to know who to go to. So they're kind of protected behind the scenes. It's just crazy to wrap my brain around that.
Exactly. And so just your audience listening is probably, they're like, whoa, this is new stuff. How do I wrap my hand? You've got to take it one bite at a time. And the key is to understand is those things exist. They're there. The key is that when you participate politically, you're going to who you naturally understand, which is your elected school director. But behind the scenes, on the other side of the wall, if you will, there are these other entities that are regional things. They're variable, made up of bureaucrats that are not accountable to the average person. And that's one of the things they did not calculate when they built these things starting in the early 20th century. So very astute question. Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, so that's one of the, jumping into a little bit more with Yakima, focused in a little bit. So like Dave, you mentioned the Council of Governments, is that something? So locally we have an entity here called YBCOG, and they're
sounds so cool.
Yeah, right.
Expensive.
And their leadership structure is that city councils send. So in our area, we have, every city basically sends a representative as their executive member to the YBCOG group. And for the city of Yakima, it's Patricia Byers. And then a member, all of the city council members actually play as a member within YBCOG. But the executive board that actually makes decisions for YBCOG are all made up of city council members and county commissioner throughout the entire county of Yakima, right? So you're blurring a lot of jurisdictional lines when you're, this executive board, which, is they're elected officials, right? But I'm sitting at the table, let's say, with the county commissioner, which now me as a city council man has a equal vote and an equal say as a county commissioner, which is not how our layer of government was established. And so breaking, YVCOG a little bit, talking about them a little bit more is they then also have a staff that is hired, and as a part of, I want to say there's probably like 5, 6, 7 of them here locally. And our cities and our counties actually all have to contribute money into this entity to actually receive federal dollars for, let's say, road projects, infrastructure upgrades, different stuff like that. And so if we don't have a YVCOG, who then becomes a YVCOG, right? Mm-hmm. Because there has to be that entity. So the question I've always been asking is, why does this not just fall underneath the county? Why are we stuck with a group that is not, why can't the county government just be the MPO, right? The Metropolitan Planning Organization.
That's a great question related to the county government. So there's 3,084 counties in the United States. And if you're just thinking about the system, which most people don't on a daily basis like me, all right, so it's on my brain all day long. It's all I can see in my head. It's kind of like, have you ever watched The Matrix and Neo eventually starts seeing the zeros and ones? I feel like that now. I can see, okay. My point is that for every average person, you're like, what are they talking about? Right? Well, just imagine that your state has X number of counties in it. Those counties are called political subdivisions. What that means is that it's the foundation. It's like the framework for the building called the state. So imagine you've got a house and there's a foundation. The counties are the foundation of the house. So the house is what we see. We see the state of Washington. The counties, the 39 counties of Washington, are the substructure or the political subdivisions of the state. The cities and the schools are not. Those are like municipal corporations, body corporates like schools and cities. Well, the county is like a legal representative of the state government. They can make laws. They have cities within them. They have schools within them. There's law enforcement. There's all these things. So if you're somebody like from the early 20th century and you're like, I just really don't like the United States. I don't like how it's designed. 50 states suck. 3,000 counties, they suck. They're fixed. They're inefficient. I just want to get rid of these bleep or things. Okay. And if I'm thinking like that, then I'm like regional, man. Regional's the bomb because it's variable. Bureaucrats can get beep done, right? They can do stuff, and these inefficient things called counties, right? And they just kind of, these people that think this way are just kind of ew. So the reason why they don't want the counties there is because they're fixed and they're substructure of the state. And those in terms of people that think regional, I'm talking about the architects. I'm not talking about the people using it, the people who created it. For them, they have condemned the United States for demolition. And so this is part of the demolition process of collapsing the county substructure of the states, replacing them with these YVCOG things, ESDs that we talked about, et cetera.
Right. You guys have any questions for Mark on this? This is a deep subject, but
my mind is blown.
I'm ready for a nap.
Yeah, for sure. The education stuff really blows my mind. It just really blows my mind that the parents' opinions are basically taken out of the equation, mm-hmm. and they don't even know it.
And there's a reason, Dave, they don't know this is because, I mean, we can go into the laziness of the American culture, or we fell asleep, or we gave away our authority and said, hey, you guys take care of it. We trusted. We can go down that. That's the thing. The key is the philosophy behind this belief that counties and states substructures need to be collapsed or condemned, like an old building, is in the world of these architects who've created these things, the ESDs, the originals, I'm not talking about the people using them. They're not the evil bastards from the pit of hell. We're talking about the creators here. In their world, they do not believe in parenthood. I'm not saying parent rights, and I want to make sure I distinguish between the two. Parental rights end at 18, but parenthood, I've got a 30-year-old son. My fatherhood didn't end at 18. It's still there. Now, the father rights ended at 18. He's a grown man. You know what I'm trying to say?
Yep.
So in the world of the architects of this regional thing, the philosophy behind them is they don't believe in parents. There's no parenthood in their society. It's in their world, they refer to parenthood as selfishness. You're just trying to live off the excitement of your child's youthfulness and innocence and blah blah blah. And so when you look at when you compare it to the actual policy and the actions, let's take a regional entity called National School Board Association, which is a national entity representing 90,000 school board members, 16,000 school districts in the United States. Now, in September of last year, this regional association, national association, if you will, it colluded with the president and the White House and the Secretary of Education to craft a letter, basically labeling anyone attending a school board meeting who was, in their view, acts or threats of violence as domestic terrorism. So that entity then got their letter. President Biden assigned it to Garland, the DOJ, and he instructed the FBI to partner, to collaborate, to cooperate with their school partners across the nation. And shortly thereafter, an FBI whistleblower released information that, in fact, counterterrorism tools were being used against parents to surveil their participation politically in these school board meetings. Now, there's a lot of rabbit holes to go down that, but the key is the regionalization of law enforcement, or the nationalizing of law enforcement. And this is tied to your city there in Yakima. It's called Strong Cities Network. It's tied to a British entity called International Strategic Dialogue. And the goal is to eventually, again, we're going to the substructure. The county sheriff, you transfer that control to bureaucrats. You leak the control, which is why watching you guys with the regional crime center, the sheriff's control gets leaked a little bit, right? Just it's through attrition, one control at a time, and eventually all the control is concentrated and centralized in that regional thing, like the ESD. In this case, it would have been the regional crime center. So the question at the table is why are they doing that? It has to do with their philosophy, going back to my original point. They just don't believe in parenthood. They believe in statehood without the county as the primary substructure of the state. So regional government helps them achieve that, and that's why we really encourage people to check our training out so that you can understand what are you doing, what's happening in your community, why are these things happening, why are parents being targeted, what is this regional thing, why can't I get anywhere? I call and they tell me to go here, and eventually I'm like, I'm done. Right. Your participation. So learn about our classes on regional government or the structure of school government so that you'll be better equipped to navigate these political headwaters.
Yeah. In our country, are there states that have already collapsed counties?
Yes. So in particularly Connecticut, so they used to have counties. They still have county boundaries, but they don't have county government. It's gone. So if you think about the Yakima County government, just imagine Yakima County government is gone, and instead all of your prestige is concentrated in Yakima, and then you have these regional entities that sprout out from Yakima that eventually encompass what used to be the destroyed, condemned building of Yakima County. So yes.
Well, it's interesting because recently our commissioners redistricted Yakima County based on a lawsuit, all this fun stuff. We covered it a little bit. That's why they're all up for election this year. But one of those districts, Districts 2, which hopefully we'll get both, all the candidates on here to talk about it a little bit, but is actually made up of 90% of city municipality, right? Between the city of Yakima or city of Union Gap, right? So there's only about maybe 5 to 10% of actual unincorporated Yakima County, that makes up District 2. So I posed the question a while ago, is like, well, what the heck does a county commissioner do in District 2 then?
You nailed it on the head, because ultimately what that does is it's not the citizens of the municipality that are represented. It'll be the corporation known as that municipality that will be represented. And and whoever the governing are will send their representative to Yakima County Council or commissions or whatever it's called. And that will be the city's representation on the board, the corporation's representation, not the constituents' representation. And that's a really important distinction. And they'll argue this point, which I understand, but they need to understand the corporation of that municipality is considered an artificial person. And the governing that are controlling that municipality have a lot of influence and power. And so there's a conflict of interest in representing the interest of the corporation and not necessarily of the people that are governed by the corporation. And so that may be hard for some to grasp, but just imagine you've got a county commissioner seat that's going to be represented by 90% of a municipality. The byproduct is it's the governing who will have their own representative and not necessarily the people from that municipality. That's the bottom line.
Yeah. I actually think I've heard some people actually in the community mention that it seems like the city of Yakima now has a seat at the table at the county commissioner level.
Correct.
It
would be the municipal corporation that has the seat at the table. So again, this is part of being a part of our country, and that's why I love the United States. It may feel a little bit overwhelming, but the beauty is that we still have the right to participate in this conversation, and you have the right to come up with strategies in order to counteract if you don't agree or you do. So, for example, you have the right to create more districts. You can increase the size of your county commission to make up for the 90%. You know what I mean? You could create, so there's 5 or something. I don't know. You can increase it to 7 or 9 or whatever. There's other options besides, I should say there are more options than just that.
Interesting. Any questions for him, guys, on that? No.
Nope, just soaking it all in right now.
See brain matter spraying everywhere.
Exactly.
So, Mark, where can they find you at? Where you're talking about training courses? Where can they find those at?
Centerforselfgovernance.com. Centerforselfgovernance.com. Remember, self-governance isn't just about leave me alone. I'll do what I want on my side of the freeway and you do what you want. Actually, govern yourself first before governing others. Might be the first step in becoming self-governing.
Yeah. And you do classes online, in person, different stuff like that?
We travel the country. We do it online, in person. We have 2 categories of training. One is called structure. This regional talk we've had today is a class just on regional government, or if you want to learn about city, county, whatever level of government you're interested in. And then from there, we have a leadership in systematic politics training. So if you want to learn how to be successful in politics, whether you're elected or not, check out our leadership training series online, centerforselfgovernance.com.
Awesome. Well, guys, we're going to wrap this show up because we are now running into the hour mark. And if you've been watching online, you're probably like, oh my gosh, I am sick of hearing from Matt, Dave, and Lindsay for this long. So we're gonna wrap this show up. I'm going to tell you guys where you can find us at. So you can find us on Facebook, Anchor, Apple, Google, and Spotify. Pretty much anywhere there's a podcast, you can find us. So go find us, subscribe, share with your friends, especially this one. This one's a little bit deeper than our little, filing week shows. This has got a lot more information. You might have to listen to it a couple times. So make sure you subscribe, send it to your friends. The other piece of that is to help support the show. We've had a lot of people ask us, how can we support the show? If you go to Patreon/Accurate Perspective, you can actually join as a Patreon and support the show, help us keep going, and stay afloat. There's actually one tier on there. You can actually have a lunch with us monthly if you want. It's kind of a fun little deal. We actually haven't had a lunch yet because everyone's been sick. No, I actually was sick too. So, anyways,
all this social distancing, but digitally.
yeah. Anyway, so find us on Patreon, support the show. If you can't do that, then at least share the podcast with your friends. Go on Facebook and share it up. We also have a little bit of exciting news with this is that our folks here, Lindsay and Dave, are also writing articles on our website. So if you go to perspectivecast.com, you'll actually see a blog in there, and Lindsay and Dave are writing articles, and they're going to be writing a lot more. So if you're a reader, not a listener, go there. I am a reader and listener, but I do not write. So you won't be seeing articles from me. You'll be seeing it from these two and maybe some others in our town. So, but thanks guys for joining us today. We're looking forward to our next episode, which will be in a couple weeks. Again, this is every other week, not every week. I would love to make it every week, but not yet. So every other week. So we'll be back in a couple weeks, and we'll see you guys then.